If you enjoy these stories about humanity at its finest, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications.
The server moon, designated M87 by the Interstellar Survey Corps, was a tomb of light and shadow. Its surface, a fractured expanse of obsidian and crystal, pulsed with the silent energy of 1 trillion petabytes. Dr. Elias Vance stood at the viewport of the Odyssey, his reflection superimposed over the endless labyrinth of data towers. Behind him, his crew bustled with the quiet intensity of surgeons preparing for a delicate operation. "We're in position, Doctor," said Lena Petrova, her voice a low hum over the comms. She was the ship's xenolinguist, her mind a library of dead and living tongues. "The deep core transceivers are online, waiting for your signal." Elias adjusted the collar of his ENV suit. "Begin the handshake sequence. Let's see what's left of them." The Odyssey was humanity's most audacious gamble, a mission to resurrect the memories of the Sileicon, a species that had vanished eons ago. Their legacy wasn't in art or architecture, but in data, a server farm the size of a moon, storing every thought, every dream, every death. The Sileicon were silicon-based, their consciousness etched into planetary crusts. Their extinction was a mystery, and the ISC believed their answers lay buried here. Elias had spent his career chasing ghosts. This one was bigger than most. "Handshake initiated," Lena announced. "Signal is resonating." "Wait, something's responding." The lights in the Odyssey flickered. On the viewport, the server moon's surface rippled, like stone thrown into water. A low, grinding hum vibrated through the hull, deep and ancient. "Seismic activity," Elias murmured. "They're not just in the data. They're in the rock." Suddenly, the ship shuddered. Alarms blared as the Odyssey was rocked by a series of violent tremors. Outside, crystalline spires jutted from the surface, growing like teeth. "Report," Elias barked. "Structural integrity at 70%. Lena yelled. "They're not just responding, they're fighting back." The Sileicon Guardians emerged from the fractured crust, their forms shifting between crystalline solidity and molten energy. They were taller than the Odyssey, their bodies faceted like diamonds, their movements slow and deliberate. They communicated not with sound, but with vibrations that rattled the ship's bones. "Evasive maneuvers," Elias ordered, gripping the console as the ship lurched. "Get us out of their direct line." The pilot, Jax, a wiry man with hands that moved like spiders, jerked the controls. The Odyssey spun, narrowly avoiding a tendril of crystalline energy that sliced through the vacuum where they'd been a second ago. "They're hurting us," Lena said, her eyes wide. "The vibrations, their patterns. Like language." Elias stared at the viewport, at the towering Guardians. "They're not just protecting the data. They're protecting the dead." One of the Sileicon slammed a massive fist against the moon's surface. The resulting shockwave sent the Odyssey tumbling. Sparks flew from the console as Jax fought to stabilize the ship. "Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3. Lena screamed. "We're losing atmosphere." Elias's mind raced. They'd come to understand, not to fight. But the Sileicon didn't seem interested in diplomacy. "Lena," he said, his voice steady. "Can you translate their vibrations? What are they saying?" She closed her eyes, her fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. "It's not words. It's grief, anger, loss. They're mourning." The ship groaned as another impact rocked it. "Then we give them something else to feel," Elias said. "Jax, get us closer to the surface." Lena, prep the memory core." The Odyssey limped toward the server farm, its hull scarred and systems failing. Inside, the crew worked frantically to prepare the memory core, a device capable of projecting human consciousness into the Silicon's network. "Core is ready," Lena said, her voice trembling. "But it's risky. If they detect us, they'll tear the ship apart." Elias looked at the faces of his crew. Jax, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. Lena, her hands shaking but her eyes resolute. And Dr. Eris Thorne, the mission's xenobiologist, his face pale but determined. "We have no choice," Elias said. "They're not just guarding data, they're guarding a graveyard. And we're trespassing." He turned to the viewport. The Sileicon were converging, their forms merging into a single, towering monolith of crystal and rage. "Jax, hold position. Lena, initiate the core." The device hummed to life, projecting a beam of light toward the server moon. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the vibrations softened. The Sileicon stopped their advance, their forms shimmering. "They're listening," Lena whispered. Elias stepped forward, placing his hand on the console. "We're not here to take," he said, his voice amplified through the ship's external speakers. "We're here to remember." The beam of light intensified, weaving through the server towers. And for the first time, the Sileicon didn't attack. They watched. The memory core projected a stream of human consciousness, not as a threat, but as an offering. Images of birth, love, loss, and joy flooded the Silicon's network. Elias felt the weight of it all, the collective sorrow of his species laid bare for the Silicon Guardians to witness. One of the Sileicon stepped forward, its crystalline form pulsing with a soft, blue light. It extended a tendril, not in aggression, but in curiosity. "They're accepting," Lena said, tears streaming down her face. "They're feeling it." The ship's light steadied. The tremors ceased. The Sileicon stood in a loose circle around the Odyssey, their forms now glowing with a gentle warmth. Elias exhaled, the tension draining from his shoulders. "We did it." But then, the vibrations returned, sharper, angrier. The Silicon's forms darkened, their glow fading into a cold, hard light. "Wait," Lena said, her brow furrowed. "It's not grief anymore. It's fear." The tallest Sileicon raised a hand, and a wave of energy erupted from the moon's surface. The Odyssey shuddered, its systems failing one by one. "They're not just mourning," Elias realized. "They're terrified of something else." The server moon began to shake violently. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface, and data towers crumbled like sandcastles. The Sileicon retreated, their forms dissolving back into the crust as if fleeing a predator. "What's happening?" Jax yelled, wrestling with the controls. "It's not them," Lena said, her voice tight with dread. "It's the data. The memory core. It's waking something else." Elias stared at the viewport, at the chaos unfolding. The server farm wasn't just storing the Silicon's memories. It was a prison, and they'd just broken the lock. "Cut the core," he ordered. "Now." But it was too late. A shadow emerged from the fractured moon, a being of pure data and malice. It had no form, no face, only a presence that chilled the soul. The Silicon's vibrations weren't mourning, they were warnings. "We released it," Eris said, his voice hollow. "The thing that killed them." The shadow thing pulsed, and the Odyssey was engulfed in a wave of static. The crew's minds were flooded with visions of the Silicon's extinction, silicon bodies shattering, consciousnesses unraveling, a silent scream that echoed across the stars. "Brace for impact," Jack screamed. The Odyssey spun out of control, its engines dead. The shadow thing loomed outside, a vortex of data and destruction. The crew strapped in, their faces pale in the emergency lights. "It's feeding on us," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. "On our memories." Elias closed his eyes, focusing on the core's projection. The shadow thing wasn't just killing, it was erasing. The Sileicon had tried to contain it, and now it was free. "We have to give it something else," Elias said. "Not our fear. Our compassion." He turned to Lena. "Override the core. Project everything we are, love, hope, the will to survive. Not as a weapon, but as a shield." Lena hesitated. "It might not work. It could destroy us." "It's the only chance we have," Elias said. She nodded, her fingers flying across the console. The memory core whirred to life again, but this time, it projected not just human consciousness, but human heart. The beam of light from the Odyssey intensified, a torrent of human emotion aimed at the shadow thing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the shadow thing paused, its static form flickering. "It's working," Lena breathed. "It's absorbing it." The shadow thing's form shifted, its malice softening into something resembling curiosity. The Sileicon vibrations returned, no longer warnings, but relief. "They're thanking us," Lena said, tears in her eyes. Elias watched as the shadow thing dissolved, not into destruction, but into a shower of light that merged with the server moon. The tremors ceased. The chaos subsided. The Odyssey drifted silently in the darkness, the server moon calm once more. "We did it," Jack said, his voice trembling with relief. Elias nodded, but his eyes were fixed on the viewport. The Sileicon were emerging again, their forms glowing softly. They weren't just guardians anymore. They were partners. Days passed. The Odyssey was repaired, its crew recovering from the ordeal. The Silicon had allowed them to land, their vibrations a gentle welcome. Elias stood on the surface of the server moon, the crunch of crystalline ground beneath his boots. One of the Silicon approached, its form shimmering. It extended a tendril, and Elias hesitated before taking it. A flood of images passed between them. The Silicon's history, their extinction, and the shadow thing they had contained. They were afraid of being forgotten, Lena said, standing beside him. And we showed them they weren't. Elias nodded. We didn't just save them. We saved ourselves. The Silicon's vibrations softened into a melody, a song of gratitude that echoed across the moon. The crew stood in silence, humbled by the weight of what they had shared. We should go, Jack said, his voice quiet. Elias looked back at the server farm, at the towers of light and memory. Not yet. There's more to learn. The Silicon had been alone for eons. Now, they had friends. And for the first time, the silence of the tomb was filled with hope. The Odyssey departed the server moon, its crew forever changed. Elias stood at the viewport, watching the Silicon shrink into the distance, their vibrations a soft hum in the back of his mind. They'll be okay, Lena said, leaning against the console. Elias smiled. So will we. The mission had been a success. Not just because they had uncovered the truth of the Silicon, but because they had proven something vital. In a universe of alien minds, the most dangerous weapon was also the most powerful tool. Compassion. The ship's comms crackled to life. Elias, you need to see this, Jack said, his voice urgent. Elias turned. On the main screen, the server moon was glowing brighter than ever, a beacon of light in the darkness. The Silicon were singing. They're not just remembering, Lena said, her eyes wide. They're creating. Elias watched as the server moon pulsed with new life, the Silicon's vibrations weaving into a symphony of data and emotion. They had been given a second chance, and now they were sharing it with the universe. The Odyssey continued its journey, but Elias knew they would return. The Silicon were no longer just a mission, they were family. And in the vast, silent expanse of space, that was the most extraordinary discovery of all.